Welcome to Journey Home to Self. This is a place for us to explore the milestones, the roadblocks, the pit stops, and the breathtaking sights on the most important journey of our lives. The journey of coming back home to you. My hope is that through the stories, insights, knowledge, and wisdom we share here, you get inspired and activated to widely fall in love with choosing yourself every single moment. I'm your host, Deepshikha Sairam, and I am truly so excited and honored that you are here. Let's dive in and journey home to self together. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode on Journey Home to Self. Before I share with you what today's episode is going to be about, I want to announce something. Last two episodes, we did a special 2-part series on the Journey Home to Self framework. If you haven't listened to those episodes yet, put them on your list ASAP. I shared with you the 4 stages we all have to go through to come closer to our higher self, to uncover the true version of you. As I shared on the podcast, there are challenges, blind spots, or things that live in the shadowy parts of us that we have to uncover there. Because that's the true work. The work is not about finding yourself. That's not how it works. You aren't a $10 bill in last winter's coat pocket. You're also not lost. Your true self is right there, buried under cultural conditioning, other people's opinions, and inaccurate conclusions you drew as a kid without any fault of yours that became your beliefs about who you are. Finding yourself is actually returning to yourself. That is why we say it's journey home to self. It's an unlearning, it's an excavation, a remembering of who you were before the world got its hand on you. So those shadowy parts of us, that helps us excavate the true you. And the more you excavate, the more treasure you find. Letting go of those past beliefs, quietening your inner critic, having the absolute confidence and trust in your abilities, in your intuition, in your vision. The feeling of I am enough. The feeling of peace and joy, forgiveness, and being in that present, in that generous present moment are just some of the gifts that are hidden under all that muck. If you ask me, the gifts and the treasures that you keep excavating are endless. Now, both the episodes, and honestly, this entire podcast, is meant to raise your awareness, to give you knowledge and inspire you, and to give you tools to help you in that excavation process. But here's the thing. Knowledge becomes wisdom when it's embodied by you, when it starts to live in your cells, in your neural pathways. Otherwise, it's just some words you heard on a podcast. I also know that when you are excavating, you can do it alone, by yourself, but you go much faster when you do it with someone, and even faster if you do it in a community. Now, getting women together and holding space and giving them the tools to transmute, alchemize, and evolve and have those personal transformation, it's not just my superpower, it is also my biggest joy. Therefore, I am so excited to share with you that we are hosting our very first Journey Home to Self live experience in December 1st and 2nd. This one is going to be a virtual live event, so you can join from anywhere. You don't have to buy a plane ticket. You don't have to do hotel reservations. You don't have to worry about what clothes you'll wear. You can show up in your pajamas. You can show up without a bra. No judgment from us. On these 2 days, we will come together in sisterhood, in community, and do the rituals, do the practices, do the transmutation as we transcend from one stage to another till we come back to that wholeness, to that earth rebirth energy. By the end of the event, you will leave inspired, light, and you will feel full of light inside you. Not only you would have met others who are on the same path and they are exactly like you, but also you will have tools in your arsenal that will continue to support in your journey. You can find all the details as well as the agenda for the 2 days on the show notes, so just go grab it, look at the details, and I would love to spend those 2 days together with you. Now, for today's episode, Back in episode 2, which is our most downloaded episode till date, we talked about using human design as a self discovery tool. For me, understanding my human design has been crucial. But one of the things in particular that has helped me is understanding my profile type. Now, you can have your human design type. So, if you have your chart, if you download your chart, you will see whether you're a manifestor or a generator or a projector. But there's also something known as profile type. When I started understanding who my profile type was, everything about me became so clear and understood, and there was a level of acceptance in me. So, for example, you must have heard the phrase be authentic in the industry so much. It's everywhere. Be authentic, get paid to be you, be real, blah, blah, blah. The struggle that I had with that was I was trying to be authentic, but what I was doing was becoming a version of the person who was telling me to be authentic. So I started to dress up like them, I started to speak like them, I started to say things like they did. And all of us do that. There's no harm in that, there is no judgment in that. My question that I asked myself, and now I ask you, is how can you be authentic if you don't know who you are? How can you be the real you if you don't know who you are? If you don't know who you are, then you will just end up being a version of someone else. And that someone else can be your parent, that can be a mentor, that can be a coach, that can be a celebrity, that can be someone who's telling you to be authentic. But because you don't have the knowledge about what authenticity actually is, you just end up becoming a second-rate version of them. And that's not true authenticity. But when I started to understand what my profile type was, now I knew who I was. Now I had an awareness of what authenticity for me really means. And that just started a whole new level of coming home to self for me. Now, I am a profile type 3x5. So this episode is going to be on the gifts and challenges of 3x5. We will be talking about other profile types as well in the future, so stay tuned for that. I would also love to know from you, what is your profile type? Send us an email. Our official email for the podcast is hello@journeyhometoself.com. That's hello@journeyhometoself.com. Tell us what your profile type is. Also tell us what are the topics you would like to hear on the podcast. And if there's any feedback, any suggestions, anything that you want to share with us, please let us know. Now, let's talk about our guest today, Ariana. Ariana Joy is a human design reader, teacher, and founder of the blog Just Follow Joy. She helps conscious business owners and soul seekers use their human design to drop the struggle and grind and create what they want in a way that feels good. Ariana's goal is to show as many people as possible that follow for joy isn't just a nice idea. It's literally your roadmap to the success you've been looking for. Now, I met Ariana first time on her podcast episode. We talk about that on the podcast episode. You'll just hear it in a few seconds. But since then, Ariana and I have become such great friends, and I absolutely love her and I adore her. Not only because she is a wonderful person, but also because our philosophies are so similar. I absolutely love the wisdom that she holds for human design and for life itself. And I love the philosophy of Just Follow Joy. So without further ado, let's welcome Ariana and talk about authenticity, deconstruct authenticity, but most importantly, let's talk about the gifts and challenges of the profile type 3x5. Well, hello, Ariana. How are you?
I'm doing great. Like I said, I got my matcha, my microphone, and now my deep chica. So it's all good.
Amazing. I am just so excited about this conversation. Just to give our listeners a little bit of a heads up, I was on Ariana's show. If you haven't watched that, we're going to link that show in the show notes. I was on her podcast. It came out this week, even though this episode is going to come out later in the year. And I had such a blast talking to her. And then I went back and listened to a couple of episodes from her podcast. And I was like, oh my goodness, she is my new best friend, even though she hasn't said so. But I'm going to be persistent. I've just decided, being a manifestor, that she's
oh my God, thank God. No, because when I introduced you in my podcast, and I was like, guys, Deepshika's freaking awesome. And I can just, sometimes it can be a little much for people because I'm such like a promoter, and they're like, and especially with my friends who have 5 lines in their charts, I want to make sure they feel seen for the real them and
Oh,
not just
you are
like what I'm
so
putting on
sweet.
them. But you rock.
You know my love language. Yeah, but I was so enamored with everything that she's been doing in her business and her podcast, and I just reached out to her and I said, you have to come on the episode. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, I wanted to talk to Ariana about being a 5 line. Both she and I have the 5 line in our human design. I'm a 3x5 manifester. What about you, Ariana?
I'm a 5-1 heretic investigator.
Got it. So that is, and you're a generator, I believe, right?
Yes, I'm a pure sacral generator, baby.
Yeah. And I wanted to talk about that because that just resonated so much with me. But we were just having a discussion and we were like, you know what? I want to talk to you about everything. So we're going to leave this episode conversational style. We definitely want to talk about the gift and the challenge of line 5, where we talk about authenticity a lot in the world, especially in the business world, and that can be a gift and a challenge for the line 5. So I want to talk about that, and I'm sure even if you do not have line 5 in your human design, then you will resonate with this. If you haven't heard our earlier human design episode, go listen to that. If you're new to human design, that will be a great intro to it. Or you have Ariana's podcast. She talks all about human design. Go binge that. All right, Ariana. Before I go in, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you joining us from? What do you do? And how did you discover human design?
So I am joining you from beautiful sunny California right now. It's where I'm from. We were just talking about this. Actually in Northern California, which is one of my favorite places in the world. Yeah, I am a human design reader, human design teacher. I'm a former copywriter in a past life, quote unquote. When it comes to how I found human design, it's funny because I hear the kind of story that I have with it from so many different people who are into human design now.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's rare for someone to find human design, even people who end up teaching it. And they're like, they see it, and they're like, yep, that's for me. That makes sense. Because honestly, if you look at a human design chart and you don't know what's going on, you don't understand the language that's being used because it can be esoteric and confusing. It looks like the love child of Scientology and calculus put together, in a chart. And you're just like, I can't do this. And so the first time I heard about it was on a podcast that I used to listen to a lot. And immediately something in me was like, oh, this is going to be worthwhile to learn about, because she was like really promotional with it. She was a projector, so it's like a little bit their job to share this kind of stuff. And the way she was describing my energy type, I was like, nope, delete, cancel, not interested. Because as a generator, it's really about us receiving a lot of stuff. That's how we manifest. So opening ourselves up to responding, quote unquote, to things. But the way she was describing it was like, you have to wait and you can't take action unless like life gives you something. The example that she gave was, let's say you want to go on a vacation, but you can't just do that. You can't just take a vacation. You have to wait until your doctor says, hey, you should really take a vacation. And then your body responds with a yes or a no. And I was like, bullshit, I'm going to do that. Are you kidding me? I don't need another person telling me I can't do something.
Right.
And so it took like 3 times the system coming back to me until my friend Kelsey Abbott came into a mastermind that I was in, and she started reading my chart in a way that I had never experienced. I was like, where are you pulling this from? Of like, this is how I manifest, and this is the kind of routine I have, and like whether or not this is like this job that I'm asking about is right for me. I was like, where are you getting all that? And I knew that I was already interested in human design. It just wasn't making a ton of sense to me. So I got a reading with her. Then I got trained in it because I was like, this is amazing. I didn't realize there's a more modern take on this.
Right.
And then it became my thing. And now I can't imagine really living life without it.
Yeah. And you are so well versed in it. I mean, and I follow a lot of human design people, and some are great and some are a little bit shady. They've probably read a book or listened to a podcast, and now they are human design experts. But I love everything that Ariana says. And, even when on our podcast, you were like, oh, yeah, I see that. It's in your chat. I just love that you took the time to not only understand it for yourself, but now you're also sharing that with the world. Yeah. Actually, now that you've said this was exactly my same experience as well. the person that I first heard human design from, she told me a few things about manifestor, and basically, the basic things that everybody talks about. Your aura is very repelling. Da, da, da,
I
da.
hate that, dude.
Yeah, I know. I was like, but I'm friendly.
Yeah. Some of the loveliest people I've ever met are manifestors. Like just the sweetest. Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was like, this is bullshit. But years later, then of course I got into it. So you're a 5 line. I'm a 5 line. For those of us listening who don't know what that is, can you just give us a little bit of an insight into that?
Yeah, for sure. So the lines in human design come from something called our profiles, or they make up our profiles. So if you look at a human design chart, you're going to have your energy type, which is how the energy levels you express most often and most consistently, how you manifest, how you receive opportunities. Then you're going to have your authority, which is basically how your intuition speaks to you in response to those opportunities. So making decisions according to your body. And then another thing that I love talking about is the profiles. And the profiles are the closest thing to a personality type in human design. They're called the costume of our design. And it's not because it isn't the real you or it's covering something up. It's just about like the how you're making this happen. It's also known as like the character or the role you play. So when it comes to the profiles, there are 6 different lines and different combinations you can have of them. So everyone's going to have 2 numbers and then a name after it. So D's is 3-5 murder heretic, and I am 5-1 heretic investigator, because all the numbers just have names that go along with them. And don't let the name heretic freak you out. That has to do with a 5 line. I'll explain that in a second. But basically, if you have a 5 line in your chart, one of the roles you're here to play is basically this thing it's the energy of a hero, of like a problem solver. And it's awesome. It comes with a lot of authority. People who have 5 lines in their chart naturally carry a sense of like weight to their aura, where it's competence. Like people sense that the 5 line aura has something to offer them, which is awesome because in general, people will expect good things of us. So people like Dee and I, when we walk into a room, even when we're not trying, people are going to project onto us more than they will of other people. And the most common thing they're going to project onto us is something positive, like, oh my God, you're here to save the day. You're the one. I love you. There's just something about you that's just so amazing. And oh my God, it's so great.
I hear that all the time.
All the time,
yeah,
right?
totally.
Which can be incredibly flattering. But the thing is, we as 5 lines are much more aware of what we're actually able to do and fulfill than other people are. It's kind of like people see a mist around us. So they just assume like, I can tell you're good at something, so it must be the thing that I need you to be.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. I think pretty much every 5 line can relate to this. And with that, because it's so flattering and because we don't want to let other people down, that's one of the 5 lines' biggest fears is like, we don't want our reputation ruined. We don't want people to not trust us, because the 5 lines role, I know I'm getting a little nitty gritty here, but this is important to know, is to be very interactive with the world and spread information, and make sure that as many people as possible know something. We're called the great universalizer, which means we have to be able to appeal to a lot of people. That means that we can seem very different to different people. And because people will see whatever they want in us, sometimes it's like shitty stuff that they're just reflecting from themselves. And then on top of that, if it's a good projection and we can't fulfill it, like suddenly we show up and we're a different person than they expected, it's like, burn the bitch, put her on the stake, and it's no one's fault really. But because of that, 5 lines can have a really hard time leaning into our authenticity, because we're so afraid people aren't going to see us anyway, or if they do, it's going to be disappointing and we're not going to be the person that they thought they wanted us to be.
Yeah. Oh my God. Can I just keep you here in my pocket all the time? My heart is pounding because everything that you've said makes so much sense. There's so much to dissect here. So let's take it one by one.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, you walk into the room, there's something about you because you're supposed to be the teacher. You're supposed to almost dispense information, dispense the things that you've gone through, right? And everybody around
for you. Sorry to interrupt you, because you're a 3-5. There's the experience and then the universalizing of the experience.
Right.
For me, it's just like I just read it in a book. But yeah,
that's funny. So when you walk into a room and then there are people who are projecting onto you, and there's, oh my God, like my mind is racing right now. I don't even know which direction it wants to go first, but I'm just gonna blurt it out all here. So the first thing is that if you do not know, if you are not clear enough and you don't know what you're good at, what do you want to talk about? What information do you want to dispense? What is your career path? Or do you want to be friends with someone? It can be very challenging because that's where authenticity comes, right? I always talk about there's this big, huge, you know, phrase in the industry: be authentic, be who you are, get paid for who you are. But if you don't know who you are, then how are you going to be authentic? Then you're just walking, talking versions of the influencers that are saying these words, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what a five line can be. I mean, I've definitely been there where I've been like these talking like mini copies of my mentors and trying to be like that, even if I didn't want to, and I thought I was being authentic. Um, it's very noisy. I can think it's so noisy in the world that you can't even listen to your true self. So if someone is facing that right now, where they're like, okay, I and I you. So when I started my business, I wanted to within the first 2 months, I knew that I wanted to do something in the personal development space. This is like 3 months after I started my business as a social media strategist. But everybody else was telling me that I would be better off as a social media strategist than business mentor, than say everybody was telling me all of those things. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. Because as a line five, you're probably well versed in all these things. You'll probably also be good in different things. So how do people start to come back to themselves if there's
Mm-hmm.
so much noise around them?
Oh, that's such a good question. So what I tell people with 5 lines in their charts, and with you with the 3 line, there's going to be experimentation with that anyway, of finding out like, well, I know what works because I know what didn't work. So oftentimes 3 5s, like, or anyone with a 3 line just has to
Right.
go through the motions first to be like, does this actually land? No. Okay. Well, that's just part of my process. That's how I find out. So that's not a problem. But so the thing about 5 lines is with competence, and I've dealt with this a lot as a 5 1, so I can say this from experience. People will tell you you're really good at a lot of stuff more often because they just need you to do it. And they can sense that, like you said, you probably could as a 5 line, but there's something in everyone that they can't fulfill. Like I, at my old job, I'm just not a big social media person. I'm not. I really hate planning it, especially for other people. Not my thing. But my boss would be like, but you're so good at it, Ariana. You're so good at it. Please just keep doing it. And so when I left and started my own business, I really had to start asking myself, like, okay, do I even want to write copy anymore? Because everyone's telling me I'm so good at this, but do I even like it? And the answer was, honestly, for me, yeah. For other people, not really. So I'm not really a copywriter anymore. I have courses on how people can do it themselves and teach other people because I know how to do that. But I had to really just turn in and say, like, just what do I want to do? And I know that this sounds simple, but especially as a 5 line, also asking, like, am I doing this just to like prove I can, especially if you have an undefined heart center like D and I, are you doing it to prove that you can to other people? Or are you doing it because you like feeling like a hero? Because we can have a savior complex a little bit.
Right.
And then also, are you doing it because you just want other people to like you? I can't
Yeah.
tell you how many times I've just like done a project for someone because I knew they were going to lavish me with praise. And that might just be me.
Mhm.
I might just be a little bit of an a-hole, but it's
Yeah.
easy to fall into because like, as humans, any human, no matter what your profile type, like we generally like people to like us and prop us up.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
But do you think it's at least true for me, and I've even done a podcast episode about this? Do you think five lines are more prone to people pleasing?
Yeah, honestly, of course, you and I both know there are so many different parts in a chart that can contribute to
Right.
that. Like we've talked about how you as a manifestors can be huge people pleasers.
Hmm.
Because it's so funny. Like manifestors know what they want. They know the direction they're supposed to go, but then the world will be like, that's great, but do it more like this. And you
Yeah.
should be more like this. And we're actually a little afraid of how good you are at just going for that. So could you chill out a little bit?
Right.
And then having an undefined solar plexus can be really tough. Or just being a reflector, because reflectors of all people take on a lot of identity from other people,
Hmm.
and that can be really tough. But yeah, for sure. Of out of like all the different profile lines, I see that the most in 5 lines for sure.
Right. Right. And why do you think that is? Is that because people are telling you that you're good at this, do this, people are projecting on you, you take on that you don't want to upset anyone?
Yeah. One of the biggest fears of the five line is disappointing other people, not just because they feel like that's a fault in themselves. And again, this is particularly true for my profile type, which is I resonate with it. But it's also we because we're meant to be received positively as five lines, or like it's a really strong driver for us because that's how we fulfill our purpose. Your profile is also how you fulfill your purpose. And whatever we're doing, like we want to make sure it has an impact. Because of that, if our reputation is soiled, then that's when we start being seen. This is why it's called the heretic, because if people start seeing that you're not doing what they want you to do, it's just like, you're the problem. You told me you could do this, or like, you promised me this, even if we didn't, it's just something that they expected of us. They put a lot of expectations on us, and we can feel that. The five line, there are two lines in the I Ching from human design, or human design includes the I Ching. There are two lines that have projections on them, the two line and the five line. The two line is not aware that people are projecting onto it. It's just like, da, 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 I'm just doing my own thing. I don't really know why you think I should go do this thing. I don't see it. The five line is much more aware of it.
Right.
We, in the metaphor of the different profile lines being different levels of a house, it's so creepy. They have the five line like pulling the shades back and like, or the curtains back, and like looking out on the street and being like, not ready yet, not coming out yet. I can see you all see me, like back off. It's kind of like the person with like the paparazzi outside of their house.
Have you been inside my house? Have you been? Do you have cameras in my house?
Are you a caves environment? Do you know your environment?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I literally do this. Every time I get out of the house, I would pull my shade and see if there's anyone out. And if the road is clear, that's only when I'm getting out.
Yeah. It's so funny because the five line, another thing I didn't really say is it's not just that we attract projections, we just attract attention. And what's so important to know about being a five line is that as much as we want to withdraw or lean into projections because that feels like it's going to make our life easier, we don't necessarily always want to rock the boat, which is funny because five lines, we came into this life agreeing to be a little controversial, especially 3 5s. We came in admitting that we're like going to be people who are going to go against the grain. We're going to be renegades sometimes. And that doesn't mean in this like giant revolutionary way. It can just be the person in your group of friends who's like, sorry, that's bullshit. Yeah. And you're probably not going to like me for saying that, but I'm going to say that. And you, especially as a manifestor, I'm sure there's a little bit of that. Tell it like it is. But there's also this, we attract attention without trying. And what's so funny is that the more we withdraw, the more attractive it gets to other people. Like, because we seem mysterious and people will like try to shake it out of us and be like, just tell me what you're about. Right. And this is like a really silly example, but I was thinking the other day about how when I go to like any kind of event, any place where there's a dance floor or there's dancing involved, if it doesn't matter if someone else is doing the worm. It doesn't matter if there are 500 people on the dance floor with me. If I'm like the most lazy dancer, it doesn't matter if someone set themselves on fire over on the corner. Without fail, I'll walk off the dance floor, maybe after one song of dancing, and someone will come up to me and be like, hey, you like to dance, huh? Oh, look at that dancer. Ooh, great dancing. And for the longest, the other day I saw a family friend I hadn't seen since I was 9. And he was like, oh, I remember you used to dance. And I was like, what the hell? I was like, I'm not this like crazy dancer. And I realized, it's probably not that. It's just the fact that this is kind of, if you have a 5 line in your chart, you're kind of built to be magnetic in a way, even if you're really not looking for it.
Right. Ariana, I want to ask you for your personal experience, if you're open to share. What about people pleasing for you? Was that a huge part of your personality before you learned about human design, and how did you deal with that?
Looking back now, I can see it has been, but it was so sneaky. I just really didn't realize it because I can admit this about myself. I'm a very image-based person. I'm working on it, but like my image to me has always been such an important thing to me. Like, you need to see me this way. You need to perceive me like X, but we can't control that in other people. We never can. So in the past, what has happened is whenever it's been more in friendships where like, this is what someone needs from me. So I know that in general, I come off as a warm, caring, supportive person because for the most part I am, but I have my own opinions and I have bad days and I'm not everyone's teddy bear all the time, but I would get myself into, friendships and relationships where people wanted me to be this thing in a box for them all the time.
Yeah.
And of course, those relationships would explode because eventually, like the sparkle would wear off, or they would start to see the real me and they'd be like, this isn't the real you. Like, you need to be more yourself. I remember I was hanging out with this girl I knew, and she was like obsessed with me at the beginning because it just tends to happen. And we were hanging out with some of her friends from her hometown, and I just didn't vibe with them. So I was just calm and quiet. And she got really mad at me. She was like, "You're not being the real you. You're not being the Ariana I know and love." And I'm like, well, the Ariana you know and love has multiple facets, just like any
Right.
other person. And so the biggest thing for me in this past year has been coming to terms with the fact that, like, the real me, there are going to be people who don't like it and are disappointed. And that doesn't necessarily say something about me. It
Yeah.
might say that we're just not right for each other, and that's okay. And that can just be a really hard thing for five lines to accept because we can
Right.
relate to so many different people. Like the
Yeah.
five line, your friend who's a 5'1" or a 5'2" or a 3'5" or a 2'5", they probably have so many freaking friends. You have no clue how they met them. You have nothing in common with that friend. You don't know why, like, they still have them in their life because we're so good at connecting with a lot of different people. But yeah, it's been painful, but it's, I think, really healthy.
Yeah, yeah. We were talking before we started recording about, your journey to being more authentic. Is this also related to that?
Yeah, for sure. For me, I'm finding a lot of I didn't realize how much of a throat wound I have, which is, it's funny because, whether you have a defined throat like you or an
Mhm.
undefined throat like me, like anyone can have a throat wound and feel like what they're saying doesn't matter or it's too much or whatever. It's funny, I usually associate it more with manifestors just because in general, my experience with them is they're like, I have to learn to speak up more. It's not usually that they need to speak less.
Right.
But I noticed that I really had that too. And the thing about the five line is that, like I said, there's part of us that it's just going to naturally be against the grain. And sometimes it's going to be really hard to say that because, I'll see things online or I'll see things that my friends have said, and other people will expect the person who said that, just because they disagree with it, to just apologize immediately. And sorry, this is particular. I've just been thinking a lot about this recently. And so for me, it's been coming back to finding my own voice and trusting that, you know what? There are always just going to be people who don't agree with what you said. I've posted like, this is so funny to me. I posted something saying, like, everyone is valid. Everyone matters. There are lots of different ways of approaching things. And that's the point of human design, is knowing that just because two things are different, one of them doesn't have to be wrong. Like,
Right.
when you can hold space for that, that's incredible. And someone comment, like the first four comments were like, we're like, this is bullshit. Not everyone's valid. You're an idiot. Like, and then like some random alt-right people found me somehow. And I'm like, well, okay, I don't know I don't know which hashtag you found me through. But I thought in that moment, I was like, damn, if me just saying you matter to someone can set somebody else off, everything's out the window. We should just say
Right.
what we want to say, right? And
Yeah.
embrace that it's probably not personal if someone disagrees.
Yeah.
Which again can be challenging for the five line, but is part of your job. Because you aren't like Ra Uru who founded human design. He was a 5'1". He's a very controversial man, very
Yeah.
divisive in
For
the way that he's.
sure.
Oh yeah.
Totally.
But
First
without
of
him
all,
sharing, oh, go
yeah,
on.
oh no, sorry to interrupt you. First of all, like people are strange.
Yeah.
Like what was that? But I'm pretty sure that is also your five line that attracts a lot of that, because that's
Yeah.
definitely happened to me as well. And you were saying this before, and I didn't want to interrupt you because you were so much in your flow, but it is true. Five lines are so, their reputation is so sacred. Like for me too. I had this experience last year where back to back to back there were a few comments that were made publicly about me, or maybe something I said, and it crushed me. Like now when I think about it, like, oh my god, that was so stupid, I'm so dramatic.
No, it
Now,
hurts.
who cares what people say? You know who you are. But at that time it was like the worst thing. It was my worst nightmare come true, and
Yeah.
so like a pub like someone saying something to you in public, I can totally understand. And I do feel like, yes, it could be a throat wound. In the divine feminine, it's also called the witch wound. It's
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
what if you speak your truth, you're going to be burnt at stake, right? So
Oh
you
yeah.
can't speak your truth, you're so afraid of that. And a lot of women, not just the five line, but a lot of women are so scared. And that is where I feel like we have abandoned ourselves. We don't speak what we want. We don't speak our opinions. We keep it to ourselves. And that's where we lose track. So, being authentic, I think for me, it totally starts from, speaking your own truth, finding yourself, like, what is it that you want to be in this world, and how is it that you want to take space in the world? Ariana, what does authenticity mean to you?
Mm. You know, that's such a fantastic question that I don't even know if I'm really qualified to answer, but I will try. What came up for me is noticing how something lands for you in your body and honoring that. Whether it's like, should I say this thing, or does what they just said resonate with me, or is what's happening around me really resonating and fitting in with how I feel in my body? It's funny, that just kind of came up to me. I have gate 61 in my chart and also an undefined throat center, so I don't have the most consistent way of explaining things. But I will just kind of get like downloads sometimes, and that's what came up for me. So that's
I
how
think
I
that's
would like to
beautiful.
explain it.
In fact, yeah, that's what I was thinking when you were talking about the projections, and I feel like that could be a beautiful tool for anybody listening who's like, how do I know whether it's a projection or it's my true voice? Is to
Mm.
always feel it in your body. Like, how does it, like, our body is the first indicator. It's a beautiful tool that we can use. It's not just for eating or reproducing or pleasuring ourselves. It's also a really beautiful indicator of our feelings and our true selves. Beautiful, Ariana. So let's talk about a few gifts for the five line. Of course, we've touched a little bit about that, but what are the gifts of being a line five?
Yeah, you're right. It has been a little negative from my side on this. Don't mean it to be. Well, the first thing that I was mentioning before is like most of the time people will put positive projections on you. So you can enter a room and it's going to be like people just kind of already feel like you're a sparkly human being who gets a positive reception, which is pretty awesome. The other thing is being able to relate to a lot of people. I don't think five lines realize how many people they can get along with until they talk to like a 4/6 or a 4 line who feels like no one likes them because they can only relate with people on like a really deep level.
Mhm.
So that's a huge gift. Also, it's funny, this isn't in traditional human design, but kind of being a connector for other people. Like I often feel like because I can relate and connect to so many different people, I can kind of be a doorway for others.
Right.
It's not necessarily always, my job or my role to be like their champion. Although I just like to do that because I'm an excited person and I just love my friends. But yeah, it's super helpful in really connecting the world. Because like I said, we're the great universalizers. Also, the fact that if you have a 5 line, there's going to be this, how should I say this? When you're a 5 line, there is something that you're meant to be an authority with. You might not realize it, especially if, like D, you have your 5 line on the outside,
Mhm.
but people sense that from you. And there is a little bit there that people will trust. And then on top of that, there's just a fun thing of being controversial. Like maybe like you have to learn to accept that and
Yeah.
like know that that's a fun thing.
Yeah.
But it can be when you embrace it and you're like, I'm a renegade. And you know what? Screw it. Like people see the 5 line as someone coming from the outside and being like able to break the seal. Oh, that's another really cool thing is that as a 5 line, like we have the ability to just like break the seal on a group really easily. Like for the most part, it's easy for us to like walk into it because we make our biggest impact on people we actually don't know that well. So it's easy for us to walk into a room of people we don't know and leave with like 7 friends, which is really cool, or just like 7 different connections. It's really
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah. I'd say that
Oh,
those are probably the biggest.
I think those are great. I think those are great. And as I'm listening to you, I'm like, oh my God, this, and yes, this. Like, I'm just a hell yes on all of those. Wow, this has been so wonderful. Tell me a little bit about, like, we've talked a little bit about the five line and also 3x5. What does being a 1/5 mean to you? Or 5/1? Is that
Yeah,
what you're
yeah,
saying?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, well, oh my God, like knowing my profile, this is why I'm so passionate about this. Even beyond 5 lines, all the lines and all the profiles, knowing my profile has helped me understand so much more about how I operate and the way I'm meant to operate and like why I like certain things and certain
Mhm.
styles of relating to others in business that my energy type and authority just didn't cover. Like there's so much. If you only knew two things about your chart, it should be your energy type and authority because everything else will fall into place. But your profile is where like you're probably going to feel the most seen. Like that's where people are like, this is me. And this explains why I see myself one way and other people see me a different way. So for example, basically the two numbers in your profile, one of them is conscious. That's the first one. That's the one that you would most identify with, like your own process. Like I see this for myself. The other number is your unconscious line. So that's what other people see you most as. So what's really interesting about my profile is I see myself as the renegade. Like I see myself as kind of like the black sheep, and everyone else sees me as a textbook. They see me as the investigator. Like they just look at me as this book. They can just flip to a certain page and they're going to have their answer. And for the most part, they're right because I really love digging deep into stuff. But what my profile has also taught me is that as a 5-1, it is important for me to see myself as an authority, which is something I'm always working on. You know, if you notice when I describe myself, like I never call myself a human design expert. I call myself a human design reader and teacher. Like that's what we're sticking with for now until I feel like I can get there. And then second, it also opened my eyes up to the fact that because I'm good at impacting lots of different people at once, there are certain styles of working within my business that are going to work for me better than they're going to work for others. And like what other people do might not apply to me. So for example, although I love working one-on-one with people and I love reading people's chart, it doesn't feel like it's, you know, my biggest jam. Because I'm really meant to be more of a teacher than a coach. And when I like my mentor, she's a 4-6. She is so good at those deep connections. Like people want to keep coming back to her and working again with her. For me, it's kind of like a one and done. And sometimes I'm like, why don't people want to come back? Like, why don't people want to work with me again? And it's just because like, that's how I operate. I can give that help in small spurts and doses. It's kind of like you as a manifester. Like you can, one of your gifts is really quick action and cutting to the point and giving people quick solutions, which is so amazing. But as a 5-1, like I had to just acknowledge them, like, you know what? People don't come to me to be coached. When I give them advice, they don't, they don't give a flying fuck about it. They're going to go do whatever they want. Cause like, I'm not the person they look to for that. They look to learn about human design, and get practical applications. Oh, that's another really great thing about the 5 line is that we're really good at making things like practical and concrete for people. So it's actually usable. But yeah, that's what I love about mine. And you know what I love about your profile? 3-5s are one of my favorite profiles ever. Like I have a lot of 3-5 friends because they're so dynamic. And also because I just admire you guys so much because the path of the 3-5 is not an easy one. It's like on the inside, it feels like this roller coaster bumping around, hitting shit in the dark. And then the 5 line can be a little controversial sometimes. And, you know, especially because that's unconscious, it can take some time to grow into to realize what's happening. And then on top of that too, like, being a 3-5, like you're the first person to step out and do something. On top of being a manifester, like, man, you're the initiator for sure. It can feel lonely sometimes.
Oh, well, thank you for saying that. I feel like now I just did this podcast to hear all the wonderful things about myself.
I love that.
But, you know, going back to what you said, once you understand that this is how I am and this is not how I am, for example, for you, you really made peace with that. I'm not a coach. I'm a teacher. This is what it's so freeing, isn't it? And I think, you know, coming back to what the conversation we started with is that it can take some time to realize that the things that you were doing in your business, the things that you're doing in your life, or how you are in your relationships, it can take some time to understand that those were the ways that you were told how to do it. But once you can make peace, once you really see clearly that that's not how I want to do it, this is how I want to do it. And it can take a lot of time as well to come to that point where you shed the, you know, the fear, the shame and everything. And and really face the fact that, okay, I'm not going to be a coach anymore, I'm going to be a teacher. That is such a freeing thing. And you know, I always talk about Ariana in the whole framework and in you know, the journey of coming home to ourselves, is that the feeling that we're looking for is the feeling of wholeness and the feeling of being enough and being complete and pure joy and bliss. But that feeling isn't coming from outside. It's not coming from a dress. It's not coming from a donut. It's not coming from a person. It's not coming from a bank account. That feeling is coming from inside of you. And that's a feeling that I have definitely felt when I've come face to face with that. Okay, this is what I want. I'm going to do it. Um, for me, it involved a lot of courage, like more. And I'm a very courageous person. I am not afraid to do hard things. I've always done hard things. I have no shame in my game most of the times, but this was the thing, you know, when I made the pivot from being a business mentor to being more of a spiritual mentor and, focusing on my writing, focusing on my speaking. Oh, there was a lot of shame involved for me. It was like, oh, what are people going to say? I've been known as a business mentor. Like I'm known in the industry. I've helped so many people. What's my family going to think? It took me months and months and months. And that was definitely my dark night of the soul where I had to come to terms with it. Did you have the same experience, or was it like, nope, I've decided I'm done?
Wouldn't that be awesome? No, it's definitely, I'll be honest, it's still a process I'm going through for sure.
Mhm.
And it's funny hearing your perspective on that too, because you have a defined G center, and something they say about people with defined Gs is that they have consistent identity, and they don't actually take on identity like someone with an undefined G center like I do, but they really see their work as them. Like they see it as
Mhm.
they have to, because it's almost like their business is a representation of them. For me, it's like my business is a thing I do. And if someone doesn't like what I do, like, okay, or like something doesn't do super well, I can deal with it, but it doesn't as much feel like a failure on my part. With someone with a defined G center, if it's like, if someone doesn't like our work, or doesn't like your work, or doesn't feel like that was actually an aligned thing for you, or you feel like it was out of alignment with who you personally are, that can be so heart-wrenching and so heartbreaking. you know
Mhm.
um they can just really identify with the actual stuff that they do. So I can totally imagine that would be even more difficult, like around your business too, right?
Yeah,
Because it
for
feels like
sure.
that's who you are.
Right, right. No, on the podcast, episode 4 is where I talk exactly about that. But how my journey to self was, um, realizing that my identity was so commingled with my business, and every time my business failed at something, it felt like a personal, public failure, and that was the moment that I had to really come to terms with, and understand that no, my worth is separate. It doesn't have a quantity on it. It is totally separate thing. So definitely I feel like, yeah, that felt very heart-wrenching and very hard for me. But it's a journey, right? You can't come to that point in one day. It's a journey. So if anyone's going through it, then know that A, we have your back. B, it's a journey. Just keep going, as long as you know that the truth is something else. The truth is about you knowing who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is like a little tangential, but I had an astrologer, my friend Caitlin Gehring was on my podcast, and we were talking about like the astrology of business and like business birth charts. And she was saying that one of the most amazing things about doing like a birth, and you could even do a human design chart for your business if you wanted to, because it will tell you like based on the birth time of your business. If anything, even if you don't look at the chart, it shows you that you in the business are two different entities. Like
Totally.
you're working together, honestly, which I think was one of the most eye-opening things for me. And I don't even have a defined G center. I do have an undefined ego center, which means like I have to prove to everyone that I am just the freaking badass. And we already are badasses. We're not here to prove
Right.
that. Yeah.
Totally. Totally. Oh my God, this has been so great, Ariana. Thank you. One last question I want to ask you. I believe that the journey home to self is a constant evolving one. We're not perfect. There's no one destination. It's about the journey. What is that part of the journey home to self that you're on right now? And what's the challenge or gift or lesson in it for you?
Absolutely. So one of the women that I learned human design from, Jenna Zoe, she always calls human, I'm going to say this from a human design perspective right now, but she says that human design isn't about learning who you are, it's about unlearning who you're not.
Mm.
And right now, I'm unlearning all the things people told me about, you're so sweet, you're so this, you're so cuddly. And feeling like I have had to be that for so long.
Mhm.
And that if I let any of that go, then I would just be like a walking knife that stabs people. And that's how
Right.
people would see me, and they wouldn't want to be around me, because as a kid, I was seen as kind of jagged. So I had to take on something. I was conditioned to be something else because it felt like that was what was working for me. So right now I'm letting go of that. I'm trying to re-become that bitch and just embrace the duality of who I am. Like I can be loving and friendly and I probably will love you, but I'm going to cut you if I need to, in a very loving way, but I will cut you.
Yeah, and both are okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that is so wonderful, Ariana. We are here for your journey. I'm rooting for you, and I'm so excited for you to unlearn and become who you really are. Thank you so much for joining us. Where can the listeners find you?
You can find me at justfollowjoy.com. I have a podcast with the same name, Just Follow Joy. You can find me on Instagram too. I'm not on it too much these days, but I do post occasionally if there are updates or anything. And if you want, you can get on my email list and get a free mini guide for your energy type. It's a really good way to start off understanding your design, especially if you have no idea how it would work in real life.
I love that. I love that. And can I just say that how much I respect that you're not on Instagram so much, because I am on the same boat. I have my love and hate relationship with Instagram. Sometimes I'm on all the time and sometimes I just go days without it. So it's very freeing.
Yeah, you kind of inspired me a little bit because on the podcast you were like, yeah, if you want to live your life, step back from social media. And I was like,
For
yeah,
sure.
That's what I needed to hear.
All right, go grab all the goodies. I will also link them in the show notes. Ariana, thank you again. And very soon, I hope to have a part 2 of this on the podcast. We need more profile lines.
Yeah.
Bye.
I love being on. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Journey Home to Self. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. And of course, your 5-star reviews are always appreciated. Thanks again and see you next week.